Hey all, Mike here. Just wanted to let you all know that we are on Patreon. Yes, that's right. The Creative Risk Podcast is on Patreon. Y'all got to get access to these wild perks that are on there, including discounts to apparel and one-on-one coaching with Joshua and myself, as well as exclusive content from our creative startup e-learning course, as well as weekly gays, we call them weekly get at it's, which are short motivational episodes to get your week off to a great start, as well as bonus full-length episodes of the Creative Risk Podcast. It's an awesome community to be a part of with great content and perks, so come join us for as little as $5 a month. And regardless, be sure you follow us on social media, and also like and subscribe to our YouTube or to wherever you're listening to on this podcast.
Super excited about today's episode with none other than drag superstar, actor, producer, and my friend, the wonderful Alexis Michelle. I've known Alexis for a bit. We actually met when she was doing makeup, actually, years ago. And then she sang with me at one or two 54 Below shows that I was doing. Anyway, we've just gotten close, and it's been amazing to watch her career trajectory, of course, as she broke out after appearing in RuPaul's Drag Race. And so today's conversation is great. First, let me just give a little bit of background, her little bio. Alexis Michelle Alex Michaels was most recently seen on RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 8, finishing in the top 4. True Colors on PBS, One Voice, Broadway, PBS, both with the American Pops Orchestra. Blue Bloods, Dragnificent, and Drag Me Down the Aisle, both those last two which were on TLC. Alexis was cast on season 9 of RuPaul's Drag Race, and after triumphant turns as Kris Jenner and Liza Minnelli, they really were so good. Made it all the way to top 5. In addition to performing her cabarets at Joe's Pub, 54 Below, and Club Cumming in New York City, you can find her singing, lip-syncing, and dancing all over the world. And, you know, Alexis has a big performing arts background. I actually got their BFA at the University of Michigan in musical theater. You can keep up with Alexis on her Facebook artist page, as well as TikTok and Instagram at Alexis Michelle Official. Enjoy today's episode. We really run the gamut from, excuse that sound, run the gamut from everything, of course, some things Drag Race, but also how drag in many ways is sort of the ultimate creative entrepreneurial path. I really wanted to get into that with Alexis because that's a no joke arts industry. Let's be clear, and the towing the line between both drag and their work as an actor as well. So enjoy.
Where I would really like to begin is with some specific plot drama from Drag Race. I'm just kidding.
Perfect.
Hi, Alexis.
Hi.
I like how you. Oh, it's not here, but when we were attempting Riverside,
I'll rename myself.
But I liked the Alex/IS, and just that. I mean, out of curiosity, like they're both interchangeable for you at this point.
It's interesting. So yeah, I've gone ahead and labeled myself because we love labels. Yeah, it's funny. I started signing emails that way, as Alex/IS, because. So here's the thing: people always want to know, what are your pronouns? What's your name? What do I call you? People want to be polite, which is so, conscientious, I guess. But the funny thing about drag names specifically is, I think, especially when you're in a sort of urban center, or really anywhere where you're trying to build your name and your brand in drag, you are selling the name, whether it's whatever the name is, whether it's some punny name or it's a soft name, or even if it's your given name, which very few people do, but some people do, you're selling that. And so you're trying to get people to know you as that and get as many people to know you as that. So I could go into the garment district and into the fabric store in the daytime, not a stitch of makeup, and I see my other, sisters from nightlife, and it's, oh, Alexis, and oh, Jasmine, and oh, Dusty, and that is just kind of New York City nightlife as I've experienced it, is everybody's always pushing their brand and selling themselves. So they're like constantly selling their name in nightlife, whether you're a DJ or a dancer or a drag artist, people are always selling that. So there's a lot of my colleagues, I don't necessarily even know their given names.
Well, I told you, Labat, I'm not sure if I told you this, but Alexis, we did this reading the other day, and we're already conspiring about many other potentials. And when I was emailing with your manager, I wrote, something like, hey, I wanted to see if Alex was free to do this, whatever the deal tools was. And he wrote back and had your name all in caps, but as Alexis, which, first of all, just to say, I later learned was just something they do internally. They capitalize names of clients, but I also was like, oh shit, did I fuck
you thought you were being corrected?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
No.
Exactly.
No, in fact, something that I think we've worked on is like this fluidity and this interchangeable quality, because and that's kind of why I like that signature on emails and things, because it sort of encapsulates it all, which for me is, I am Alex, I am Alexis. Alexis is not a persona or a character, she's me. And the blendability between me and her and he and her, like it's all kind of like this to me. So that sort of smushing together of the names really feels right. And what's funny, I know you didn't ask, but since we're talking about sort of titles and labels and stuff, when I first came up with my drag name, it was just kind of a quick decision made, because I was like, oh, I'll feminize my legal name. And that's how I arrived on Alexis Michelle. And while there wasn't a whole lot of intention when I first entered into that, it actually became very telling and very fitting with how I feel about my drag and my identity in general.
Well, I mean, just to say, branding, and specifically you as a true multi-hyphenate, that I imagine crosses over between Alexis and Alex, one and the same, yes, but as you're saying, sort of like live in different worlds professionally. I'm curious how you're navigating that, but I want to go back. I want to go back to the beginning, just sort of where your creativity all started, when you realized you wanted to be an artist. What was there, like a moment? Did you grow up with it? Where did it all begin?
So, like there's this sort of antiquated question or notion about this conversation started more to do with sexuality, but I think now there's some confusion about gender as well, and about sort of a product of environment, or even of the power of suggestion. Like if you're exposed to something, then is that how it becomes? Which is, when it comes to identity, I think is not really how it works. I think ultimately, you are what you are, and you feel that on an internal level. And I suppose that knowing what options or alternatives are out there might inform that. But anyway, that's a soapbox moment. But to your question, as far as sort of like what was the moment or what was the thing, there definitely was an exposure to some movie musicals at a young age. And that, coupled with growing up native in New York City and having access to the theater, those two things together, plus some gay genetics, made a very colorful and queer me. But if you want to know like the references, the cuts, oh God, there was like a rotation of I feel like when I say Annie, I have to qualify it was the 1980s Carol Burnett, Anne Ranking, Bernadette Peters, Albert Finney, Annie. Even though in my head that you really don't need to specify because there's only one that matters. But
Sure.
But yes, there's a rotation of Annie, Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, Grease, Wizard of Oz. Those are really the core VHS you know, tapes that I think are partly why I am the way I am. And I like to tell people the first Broadway show I saw was Into the Woods, the original production, original cast, which I did see at 5 years old, but I don't think it's really true. I think the truth is I saw Cats first.
For me, by the way, my VHSs were MAME with Lucille Ball and the really only Music Man That Matters, which was Robert Preston and Shirley Jones. And I would watch them somewhat interchangeably back and forth after school.
I like the one with the George Costanza. There's the one with George Costanza with Jason Alexander. Isn't he in one of them?
Well,
the
he's
TV
in
movie.
Bye Bye Birdie.
In the
no, is he in music? I don't know. I get them all mixed up. But
maybe he Marcellus in the TV Music Man?
He might be.
Because that was
I'm looking now.
It was Kristen Chenoweth, I remember. And I know Jason Alexander did the remake with Vanessa Williams.
By the way, Jason Alexander would be a great drag character. I'm just throwing that out there. Anybody out there? Yeah, somebody do Jason Alexander drag.
Well, that's I mean, I suppose.
Okay.
What?
I'm sorry, you're wrong.
I'm off. Okay.
He was not in the TV Music Man.
Whatever.
You get to keep your straight card.
Baker. Yeah. David Aaron Baker played Marcellus.
Of course.
Well, so okay,
and
who?
Not important. This is not the focus of the episode. The TV Music Man.
It can be.
But okay. So you have those great movies, all of which are terrific, and of course, then that started your creative queer journey. But then you went to University of Michigan for musical theater. So and kind of in line with that, I imagine that some of the OG goals were, maybe still are, but the OG goals were very musical theater related. Is that true?
Legit theater. Yes.
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 Yeah, no, that was the whole goal. That was the trajectory, that was the course, that was the intent. Like from that young age, seeing Into the Woods when I was 5. And I think it's significant, you know, even at that young age, the music spoke to me. The Sondheim score spoke to me. The lyrics, as I aged with them, became more resonant. You know, there's so much I missed as a little one, but like as I grew and experienced life, everything started to mean more. But I think it's significant, and the influence of Sondheim in my whole sort of artistic journey is there. It's present. But yeah, the goal was always being on Broadway. I wasn't even going to go to college. I was going to finish high school and just start working in the theater. That's what I thought.
And wait, where
It
you're
was
from New
one,
York, from New York, from New York. That's right. That
I'm
makes
from New
sense.
York.
Mm-hmm.
There was um there was a summer, it was summer 99. I was doing West Side Story at Interlochen in northern Michigan. I was playing Bernardo to Michael Arden's Tony to Santino Fontana's Riff. And
Wow.
I heard the head of the program at Michigan, Brent Wagner at the time, give a sort of information lecture about the program to prospective students. And I went in and I listened, and there were a bunch of students at Interlochen a couple years older than me that were all in the show with me and friends of mine, and they were all sort of either already going to Michigan or focused on going there. And so I think between their influence and hearing about this great program, I called my mom and I said, I know where I'm going to college. And I think she sighed a big sigh of relief that I changed the plan.
I have a
But yeah,
question. Oh, sorry. I have
just
a
that
question.
musical theater, was always the goal. And I'm sure we'll get to this later, that I shifted focus for several years and sort of, changed the angle a little bit, but the dream is still the same, is still alive.
Well, my question is about, because, you know, I think about that sometimes, I think we're all of the same age, era, whatever. And, college was just so shoved down our throats, and it's funny because, Gen Z, all of these Gen Zers, this is not artist related, but I don't know if you guys saw this, but there's like a migration now back to like plumbing, being electricians, trade work, actually.
I didn't see that.
You know, because yeah, there's like a big trend with Zoomers doing that, and Joshua and I went to the same college, although Joshua is about 30 years older than I am. And we went to North Carolina School of the Arts, which is a conservatory. We work with people with Juilliard, Yale, whatever. Do you think that your school, Michigan, which is arguably the best musical theater school, do you feel like it prepared you for the business? And no shade if it didn't, or if it did great, but do you feel like it prepared you for the business?
No, no. And
In what way?
it's no, as you said, no shade. I think Michigan prepared you as well as any program could. I think there's just something innate about the fact that it's an educational program and it's not the real world.
Right.
I remember this friend of mine, funny story.
That's what
I
I
love
thought you were
that song.
going.
I remember after I had graduated from Michigan, I was either on the phone or texting with my friend Helena York, who was a year below me at school. And of course, she's gone on to like epic things on stage and on screen. And she was super crushed her senior year at Michigan because she was going through like a little vocal moment. And I think like was cast as Mrs. Walker in their last semester in Tommy, and ended up not being able to do it because of like whatever she was working through. And she was just devastated, And I said, honey, I know it's Michigan. I know that feels like everything, and I know it feels like everything while you're in it. But trust me, next year it's going to be the school musical. So I think that there's just a separation between educational programs and the real world that you can't.
Right.
It's kind of like the first time I walked into the workroom in Drag Race and I saw sort of all the the nuts and bolts, and I was like, oh, this is what it's like. And it was not something that I could get my head around until I was in it. And I think the same is true
Sure.
of the acting profession, and it's probably true in any field, right? That well, maybe some more than others. But I also think things shifted in such a dramatic way in the business, and I think that they shifted kind of as and after I graduated. So there were angles and elements to showbiz that like were really not on any educator's radar.
Sure.
I mean, think about it. I was just thinking about this the other day. I am the generation that Facebook was born during my college career.
Same.
When Facebook was
Amazing.
first born, you had to have an EDU address to have a Facebook
And
account.
we couldn't get it at our school, by the way. I had to find, our school wasn't available. Anyway, yes.
Right. So I think the shift toward, you know, our lives lived on these devices, I think that probably just sort of like created an even greater gap between any educational program and the business.
Sure.
And even the grade below, below my senior class, so that was Helena's class, they were just somehow like right at the start of this curve to where they were putting videos of themselves on YouTube. YouTube, I remember first understanding what YouTube was and like going down every, you know, musical theater video rabbit hole I could. I only first discovered that when I was doing summer stock after my senior year, like after I graduated.
Yeah.
So the notion of like, oh, I'm gonna record myself singing at this school performance and put it on YouTube, like was so not something even I could conceive of. So I think that kind of like evolution in the business is part of the gap. But on top of that, I don't know. I mean, I remember there was one lecture in performance class that had to do with performer taxes and sort of getting you to think about writing off your professional
Sure.
expenses when you do your taxes. So that was like something in the back of my head, but until you're sort of really doing it real time,
Right.
there's a whole nother layer of education that happens when you're really in it.
Well, I have a question about sort of this, you know, I'm kind of jumping a bit, but it's like, you know, the fact that, you know, we always talk about, I'm very, very much plugged into, you know, what's going on in this moment in terms of like the institutional Hollywood's collapsing. You know, I would argue institutional Broadway's collapsing, right? And it all has to do with this democratization of entertainment, you know, and it used to be that, you know, there was a monoculture that decided what was hot and what was not. Now with the internet, I would argue that it's more of it's truly free for all. It's truly like a meritocracy in terms of who can go out there and actually, you know, get attention. Now, you know, I think that there's obviously a lot of cons though to this too, which is this never ending grind, right? Of like always now having to stay relevant, always making sure you don't disappear or whatever, or that something doesn't overtake you, you know, and it's more personal responsibility, I would argue. Do you think that this transition, because I know that you have fans and you have, you know, a strong community you've built. Do you think that overall this sort of the phones and this sort of change in the industry, do you think it's for the better? Do you think it's for the worse? Are you neutral? What do you think about it all? Where do you stand with it?
Oh God.
Personally?
I mean, so I turned 40 last October, and I feel like I've officially arrived at the age where everything used to be better. You know, it's like I remember I remember when Tate's chocolate chip cookies were really made in like a smaller bakery in East Hampton, and they came in like one stack of clear cellophane. And now
Sure.
that they've like, you know, they're made in factories, they're in like different packaging, like in the rows. So like, I remember when the Tate's cookies were different.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm that person a little bit, and that's probably how my feeling about tech and its influence on the business of the arts is going to come off. I think, God, I feel like such a fogey, but like I really do think the presence and influx of tech in our lives, and we're experiencing it now in like the biggest way ever. But the truth is, it started when we were kids.
Yeah.
The presence of computers, you know, going from being like something as big as this apartment that obviously not everyone would have a connection to becoming small enough to have on your desk at work, and then eventually to have one in the home for the whole family, and then for eventually everyone in the family to have their own. I was just listening recently to this thing on NPR about how the presence of technology in our lives has had a huge impact on our physical bodies. Like, we became more sedentary people because of technology, because the percentage of people out making a living being physical or doing a trade, like you were talking about before with trades, that was a much bigger percentage, where now, of course, the majority of people's business is tied to a computer. So, you know, the sort of evolution and of pain and chronic issues that people have, a lot of it is related to tech. And I think what we experience now is how, especially like with the smartphones, like having things so at your fingertips has taken away, it's taken something away from the way people, you know, are socially. And because they've become such a focus, they've infiltrated to things like the arts.
Right.
I mean, I was just watching a video on Instagram today about a casting director talking about how social media is a part of casting.
Right.
And
well,
of course, like
no, just to say about two things about this. One is that literally I'm directing this thing next week, and we were looking for someone in particular, and I just went to the people that I followed and like pulled 7 names and sent them to the artistic director and was like, take a look at these profiles, because like what else, that's the easiest way. What else were you going to say though? Sorry.
Just that, you know, she wasn't, even though I know this is a thing, the size of one's following matters, unfortunately, which is so unfortunate, and the part that I hate the most. And this casting director didn't mention that, but what the casting director did say was that it's having any kind of online presence is just a way for someone to be able to land somewhere and hopefully get some sense of you. So in that way, I suppose it's a useful tool. You know, I don't need to worry about, oh, where can they see my image? They can see my image. It's there.
Right.
You know, and I'm well represented, I'm well documented. But yeah, that's just like not something that we were thinking about when I was graduating from musical theater school.
Sure.
And not only that, being someone who's always been an old soul, coming out of theater school, having played a lot of mature, fussy, mature and fussy. Fussy is my word for like the sort of gay, sort of not, sort of
the Paul Lynns of the world.
Yeah, the Paul Lynns of the world. Coming out of like theater school,
like
playing those roles, I thought, and my understanding and my image of what it meant to be a working actor in the theater in New York was like, oh, well, you don't start getting the roles until you're in your 30s. So I thought which is probably not true. I think part of that is just styling, and that people, you know, in their 20s looked older when you look back at content. But I think there was certainly a better, a larger presence of, you know, there was this shift happened in the business. I think when the viability of making your living solely in the theater became like a thing of the past, when theater people started having to do TV and film to supplement their income, I feel like this shift happened in the theater where everything became more filmic. So
totally.
no more people in their 20s playing juveniles. Ingenue weight went from 130 to 109, you know?
Right. Well, we're all like, you know, it's funny. It's you go to see anything off Broadway. It's like even off Broadway, and it's like everybody's different races and everything, which is great, but everybody's drop dead gorgeous. Everybody's stunning. Whereas like, I feel like, you know, back in the day, definitely it was definitely a lot of whitewashed stuff, but it was like you would have Peter Falk, who like had a glass eye, and he was like a TV star. And it was like he was like an ugly dude with a glass eye. And it's like he was a star. And
you and I would be starring in something today, Mike.
Yeah, please, exactly.
Yeah. So,
go ahead, Alex.
I do think there's just been a lot of shifting, and I suppose that that's not to be avoided, right? Like you have to evolve, you have to grow. It just so happens that I think a lot of evolution in many areas of the world, the arts included, have been steered by technology. Just what, you know, since you asked about it specifically on the phones, the one example I want to give, which is not theatrical, but it is actually of the drag world, is on the last season of Drag Race, you had these two TikTok stars, Sugar and Spice, who had really never done much drag outside of their home. And they built their brand on TikTok. And that was enough to create enough of a splash, enough of a following. It also happens that I think that they are strong visual artists and have a point of view and are talented at executing their visions. So it's not without any of that. So like that is definitely there. But that coupled with the brand that they built themselves on a social platform, it's no longer something you know, to sort of turn your nose down at, because these are tangible money-making people in the industry.
Well, you know what's first of all, I'm a huge drag fan. Just as an art form, I often say that if I was 10 years younger, I would totally pursue it. And people often say, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it now? I'm like, no, it's hard. It is hard. And it's hard just like a lot of creative businesses, but I would argue that the art of drag in many ways is more challenging. Because it's all the same, you know, the need to grow an audience. But then, you know, talk about self-producing. You're really out there building your own, not just persona and brand as whatever that persona might be, but producing your own work as you are wont to do. But I want to talk about the idea of branding for a second in relation to drag, because I think I use this as examples with artists all the time, that it is obviously important within that industry to carve out a specific niche. This is sort of the role that I play, and the role in terms of growing an audience. And then, as you were saying at the top, in terms of Alexis being able, that name being able to sort of become synonymous with X, Y, or Z. How does one develop a brand in the art of drag in order to stand out in the crowd?
Well, of course, it used to be things like, you know, come up with a punny name and have the mix or the number and do it in the way that you do it that becomes instantly recognizable, right? And those things are still true. That's all still part of the wheelhouse, but it is in this field or any entertainment field, I think building your brand in a public facing way, meaning with substantial online visibility, is an integral part of it. And that was sort of just starting as well, you know, when I was starting in drag. I'll give you an example. Sorry if my table's bouncing. My dog is, of course, trying to get into my lap as we speak.
Another earthquake.
Yeah, right. What was I saying? I was saying
online presence when you're coming up. Yeah.
That, you know, musical theater was the goal. Broadway was the goal. I got my Facebook profile while I was studying musical theater at Michigan. Shortly after I graduated, within the first few years after graduating, Drag Race hit the airwaves, and I started auditioning for the show as early as season 2. And they wanted to know, do you have a website? Do you have a Facebook? So I created an Alexis Michelle Facebook account. There was a lot of controversy over the years because if you had a name like Head of Lettuce, Facebook would clock that as not a real identity. And they were cracking down on that. So a lot of people lost their drag Facebook accounts because my name is Alexis Michelle. I think I went under the radar.
Head of Lettuce is good.
Well, you know, she's the prime example I always think of. If there's a punny name in drag, you know, that you're going to come up with, that sort of like that.
Right.
What a perfect example. And of course, there's been other fantastic names over the years, but Hedda is one of the OGs. Okay, he's succeeded now.
Let's welcome. Who is our friend here, by the way? We have to introduce.
Victor VILLAR-HAUSER is doing a class. So who's Victor? Well, he's an acting coach and he's the real deal. I've worked with him before. His clients have appeared in Oscar-nominated films, and they've been recognized with awards like the Gotham Award and the Cannes Breakout Award. And recent client projects of his include Peaky Blinders, One Night in Miami, Grey's Anatomy, Ballers, Veep, Brooklyn, Feud, Betty and Joan, Insecure. I mean, his clients work nonstop. Just a little bit of a dated bio, I think. But he's offering a Zoom film and TV audition intro class. It's happening 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, and 5 p.m. GMT. Tuesday, the 23rd of April through May 14th. It'll be between 2 to 3 hours long, 4 weeks. It's $300. I recommend this class to any actors that are wanting to sharpen their process around attacking any moment of acting. Though this class is specifically looking at your self-tape habits, it will challenge you on how you break down material and bring consciousness to your bold choices, providing solutions, making you aware of how much agency you truly have. Wake up to your potential as an actor. Every week you'll be given an audition that you'll share with the class. You'll meet and you'll break down this material, and you'll introduce new habits. You'll then be given notes and asked to tape a callback, which Victor will discuss with you privately on a call after. I really believe in Victor. Like I said, I've taken this class, and it's helped me a lot. He's a phenomenal teacher. Email him. His email is below, but I'm going to say it's VV, so like Victor, so 2 V's, vvhclass@gmail.com. If you missed this one, I would still email him and say, hey, put me on the list. I'd love to be a part of, the alerts you send out for your next class. And we love Victor. And, yeah, sign up for his class, guys.
George.
George.
He's not into cameras. He wants to be in my center of attention, but he's not here for the camera.
Hello, George. Where did you go?
But yeah, so I had 2 Facebook accounts, and I was very specific about that because, again, when I was coming out of theater school, if I thought, and I think that there, at the time may have been some truth to this, if I let New York City casting directors know that I also dabbled in this thing, this drag thing, well, you can forget about ever playing Billy Bigelow, right? So I was very careful about branding in the beginning to keep my musical theater trajectory very separate from my drag trajectory. And there's been an evolution there as I've been in the business, even as I've been in the public eye, that has evolved.
Okay,
can
I ask a clarifying question about that, Alex? Because when we first met, we met working with Matt Murphy, and then you came and you sang, I think once or twice when I was doing a show at 54 Below. But you did it, and because I remember Ryan Hill, who's a mutual friend, blah, 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 was helping to produce it. Also School of the Arts, Laban. And, but you came and you did it as Alexis. And I think that was partially part of just like what it was like, oh, drag queen Alexis Michelle, like as part of the evening. But out of curiosity, would you have preferred, because this was before Drag Race, would you have preferred to have done it as Alex Michaels, for example? Like, does there feel like a difference?
I was already, when you and I met, I was already actively pursuing Drag Race. I had not yet been on, but I was building my brand, my drag brand, and that seemed, at the time, that was like, oh, this is an important step for Alexis. Any little bit of visibility I could get for her, I thought was helpful toward the Drag Race goal. I sort of remember, because that's many years ago now that we met and that we did that, but I remember thinking, oh, this is good. This is good. Look on social. Alexis is at 54 Below. She's at Broadway's living room. Because there was this sort of moment where I both said to myself, I can't suppress this part of myself creatively. I need to let it out and be more open about it. And I remember I sort of felt like I had to come out to my agent at the time. I was like, look, just so you know, I've been auditioning for this show, Drag Race, and I'm going to keep auditioning. I just, wanted to let you know. And his response was like, oh, that's great. I'll keep my eye out for drag parts too now. So it definitely started to shift while I was already, in the world. But of course, the sort of like steps taken and progress made in representation and in opportunity for queer people, for drag artists, for trans people, it's obviously changed a lot in the last decade.
Well, what's interesting about, and this was when we were kind of going back to the beginning of our conversation, is like that moment of going like, because this is business in the sense of like what you're leading with is what you're leading with. And if there's too many sort of hard pivots all the time, like, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that, or I'm this, or I'm that, it just feels chaotic and it can feel untrustworthy. So it's when you made the choice to be like, okay, like I am leading with Alexis Michelle, was this like a very conscious decision you made? Was this like something that sort of just happened naturally? And like what went into that decision, I guess, to go, this is how I'm positioning myself in the world now?
It was in the sort of simplest way, it was twofold. It was at the point when around the time Or no, I guess after. At some point, I'd already been auditioning for Drag Race. Drag was always this thing, this like bit of self-expression that was like always there since childhood. Was kind of in my back pocket. I sort of explored it a little bit in high school and college. But I would say up until a certain point when I was sort of actively pursuing the more traditional theatrical trajectory, I've been doing like maybe a regional show or a summer stock show and maybe a little downtown show, something
Sure.
off Broadway, maybe like a fringe festival thing. I'd been doing like 3 of those jobs a year is sort of
Sure.
where I was at.
Sure.
I hadn't quite had a really big splash in the legit, conventional theater.
Sure.
There was one audition that I had years ago that I thought might have been the turning point, and I came very close. It was down to me and one other person for it was like I think it was the Vegas sit down of Jersey Boys.
What part?
And
Bob Gaudio?
I don't even think it was for Bob. I think it was like to cover a few roles, including Bob.
Stop it.
Anyway, I didn't get it, but it came down to me and one other person, also a Michigan graduate. And I always wondered, like, oh, if I had gotten that, like, would that have been like the turning point that would have led me down that path, the path that I always saw for myself first? But I think the combination of seeing a new playing field for the art form of drag, for this form of self-expression, coupled with probably my frustrations within the business, within auditioning for theater and just not quite getting a moment. I think when I turned my focus to drag, which really was by way of Drag Race and auditioning for it, I think I saw that as a way in to the business. I thought this is also an angle of my performative life that is highly specialized. The skills that you need are really specific, and I have those skills. So perhaps this is going to help give me this extra push into the spotlight one way or another.
So I want to run with that for a second, Alex, because obviously it has, and you've been able to show like your many talents. Both I would obviously on the show itself, as a performer, obviously, your Kris Jenner was a standout of the season, but that just gives your background. Just but also it's parlayed into your shows now that you do, or Joe's Pub, your concert that you're taking around. And so I'm curious at this moment where we've talked about the fact that yes, as Alexis, you want to continue to cultivate and grow and build that creative part of yourself, but also I know you want to do other things, meaning maybe as Alex Michaels. And by Alex Michaels, what I mean by that is, this is my point about the concert we did. Maybe you don't do it as Alexis, but you step into a track. Is that true by putting words in your mouth? But then B, do you find yourself having a bit of a tug of war in this next iteration of your creative self?
Well, I'm very much in the throes of it, so I wouldn't say I have it all figured out by any means. But what makes it unique, did I see drag and Drag Race as the way in? Yes. But I also did it by tapping into an authentic part of myself, a part of myself that I didn't even fully understand when I
100%.
started to pursue it. I used to, when I came out again, you know, I came out at 13 years old in regards to my sexuality. When I came out again to my mother, which was after college, saying like, oh yeah, you know, I still like to dress up. And then I sort of dealt another blow when I said, I'm going to audition to be doing drag on television. And I remember like pouring my heart out in this letter to my parents. And I gave it to them and they said, well, that's great. Like, obviously means something to you. Like, but back then I saw it as this performative thing. I saw it as a costume. And what my years in drag have taught me about myself is that there is a part of me, you know, I think a lot of us possess, I think most of us possess different levels and expressions of gender, and even within, you know, one body. And I think that what drag helped me realize is there is a female quality, there is a femme quality, and drag is the tool, is the box of crayons that helps me express that. So that makes it even stickier, Joshua, because I am not just talking about, oh, well, what costume do I want to wear today? Because of course we all make that choice every day, you know, whether we're putting on a tux, a gown, or a t-shirt, whatever. We're all making that choice daily. But as far as how I'm pursuing my artistic expression and my artistic life, it's complicated, and I'm still figuring it out because it is so tied to identity and not just some external piece of the pie. That said, and this is so obnoxious because the ink isn't dry yet, but I'm really excited. Something just came through, something just transpired that is a real coming together of the worlds for me. And I'm very excited for when I'm able to announce that, share that, but it'll be very soon.
Well, I think what's wonderful about hearing everything you just said is a couple of things that I want to lift up. You know, the first being like when you had that moment of like, this isn't working and I want to do, I need to figure out another way to basically do what I want to do forever, which is perform, express myself creatively. That adaptability. And look, it wasn't just like, obviously it sounds like you were doing drag before you really made that hard pivot, but you know, that decision coupled, that very practical decision coupled with authenticity, this is and inner searching, I think is what makes the creative entrepreneur's journey interesting, more so than potentially other entrepreneurs. Is that, look, we have some drag artists are some of the most entrepreneurial people I've met. You know, the amount of self-sustaining, the amount of, they do everything, you know, but that towing that line between authentic self-expression and just cold hard brass tacks, like, this shit ain't working, time for something else, time for a new angle, time for a new pivot, is those things can coexist and actually complement each other.
Yeah. I had a moment of realization. This was already after I was on Drag Race the first time, where I got myself into drag for something. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, okay, this is not by mistake. This is not, oh, you're good at makeup, you're good at hair, you've got a sense of style. It's like, no, there are many things that came together in a meant to be way. This was not just by chance. And you know, to the point you were just sort of talking about, I think there's been a lot of what is it about New York and drag? And I've always thought what it is about New York and drag is New York being, probably the #1 live performance hub in the world. Of course, there's other cities that are great performance hubs, but I think that New York being the place you go to pursue live performance, you catch a lot of the people like me, talented people who maybe didn't quite have that moment, that break, who are bursting with this creative energy that you have to channel into something, and drag becomes this vehicle, this conduit for that creativity and that expression. And it's certainly what happened for me, and I've seen it be true for a lot of other people. And I think even people on the world stage of drag, a lot of them started right here in New York. And I think that comes from, them coming from wherever they came from to pursue a life in the theater, or, maybe doing stand-up comedy, something like that. But I think that is the thing about drag, and the thing about drag in New York specifically is it's a lot of people bursting with creative energy who happen to be great live performers.
So when you look at the future, what are some of your goals that you have, maybe for Alexis? And when I differentiate between Alexis and Alex, as you said, they're sort of one and the same. But I'm more thinking like, oh, this is my drag art, and this is my, other, so to speak. So what
it's
are
all
your
expressions
goals?
of the art,
Sure.
Well, again, it's all still in process, so I feel like I'm still kind of spitballing and figuring it out. But I think ultimately the art of telling stories has always been at the very center of what I am interested in, whether that's telling Sondheim's story on a Broadway stage, or telling, Alexis's point of view through the lens of, the legendary women that came before me. It's all about telling stories or conveying a part of human experience. And that's always been very interesting to me. And I would like to keep doing that. Now, that said, the freelance life is not a sexy one. Even, even at the highest level, the inconsistency is maddening, makes you pull out your hair. So I am still figuring it out. I would love to keep telling stories, but I would like to find a way. I would like to find something in my life that is both fulfilling and can bring some stability,
Yes.
George needs a place to run around.
Yeah. You mean the 800 square feet apartment isn't enough?
Yeah. This one's almost 1,000. Don't get it twisted.
Okay.
I'm sure it shows in the price too.
But
oh my gosh.
But yeah, I think walking that line, being 40 now, walking that line of like, yes, I understand my life is fabulous and colorful and fulfilling in so many ways. I would love it to be a little more stable one way or another.
What's interesting, because I have a question, just a couple more questions really quick, but Joshua, it sounds like you were going to ask something. I was going to pivot off something else. I don't know if you were
well I actually just am curious when it comes to income streams specifically for drag artists. And obviously it's going to be different pre something like RuPaul's Drag Race and post. They're just going to be different, of course.
Yeah.
But just and you obviously can speak to both, I'm sure, as a queen who certainly probably had her home bars in various venues pre RuPaul, and now is doing much more. But as you patchwork that together, what are those potential income streams? How do, you know, successful queens like yourself, how do you make money if it's not too much of a gauche question? I'm just curious from an artist standpoint.
It's sort of a combination of diversifying and get in your lane at the same time. I think part of building a brand, you know, RuPaul used to talk about branding and would say things like, know who you are and deliver at all times. And I think that is sort of to the idea of get in your lane. Like, I know what kind of artist I am. I know what kind of performer I am. I am not, you know, a pop diva. I am not that kind of recording artist. I am not a TikTok, you know, makeup artist, maybe yet. But so I think it's a little bit of like really getting down with what's special and unique about you, and then finding the ways to sort of diversify that. And I mean, you know, I probably no, I didn't. I never sold a piece of merchandise with my brand on it in drag before Drag Race. That was just something I thought you needed that platform to do. But there are plenty of drag artists out in the world who have proved and are proving that you actually don't need, you know, this one stamp of approval, or whatever you want to call it, to pursue business in the art form.
Right.
I think about someone like Laguna Blue. She has had some great opportunities, both live and on camera. She is a recording artist. She writes music constantly, records it, makes beautiful music videos, has a very clear brand, and is also a visual artist in a way that translates both to the drag creation as well as, you know, creations on pen and paper and paint and watercolor, etc. And so that's someone who is like building their whole brand with great continuity, you know, across all channels, all platforms.
And you even have like Varla Jean and Dina Martina, old school queens, but
Yeah.
you know, who have selling their own merch, and you know,
they are, you know, particularly people like Varla and Coco Peru and Sherry Vine and Jackie Beat, these and Hedda Lettuce, these are the people I call the lifers. They are the people who, to me, are the real heroes of this art form. They are the people who built brands and, you know, performance empires without the mainstream or the now mainstream advantage of a platform like Drag Race. They built their audiences the old-fashioned way, the hard way, one show at a time. And that's why those people continue to sell out their tours and their engagements, because they've built that reputation little by little. And in some ways, I feel like I kind of straddle the line. Obviously, I've had great opportunities and great exposure by way of Drag Race, but given the kind of artist that I am, you know, you referenced my live cabaret shows that I'm doing now at Joe's Pub. I've done, at this point, probably close to 24 live cabaret shows since 2017 in the city. So yeah. I have a reputation now. People know what, you know, that I put on a good, fun, entertaining cabaret act. So that's how you build. That's one way you build the brand. Maybe that's the old-fashioned way you build the brand. And so I utilize that. And then I'm also, you know, Nana's trying to stay awake on the internet, you know, and build it from that angle too, because those are all legitimate.
Labad, let me share one follow-up thought here before you ask another question, just because what I realized as you were saying that, Alexis, you yourself referenced yourself as an old soul not too long ago. And here's
Yeah,
what this
yeah.
matters. Because and Mike, I think this is interesting because Mike and I talk a lot about how actors market themselves, and how it's kind of
Right.
hard to because you're not really selling like actor. And let me be clear what I mean by this. And I'm going to be careful with my language, not to offend any other amazing artists. But your persona, Alex Michaels, Alexis Michelle, as we've talked about, the synchronicity between those two, isn't so much a caricature. It's not a character.
Right.
It is like you said, an expression of your art. It is another element of Alex, the amazing artist. And Mike, I think I told you. I know I told you, Alex, but when we did this reading the other day, there were a few people there who afterwards were like, Alexis was so good. I mean, just a fucking great actor, like just a great dropped in, honest actor. And I say this because even when we look at some of the queens who are crossing over different industries, theater, TV, et cetera, whatever, part of it is based off of my perspective, a more of a personality, not to take away talent, whereas like literally put you in Sweetie Todd, put you in Shucked, put you, I mean,
Well,
that's
I
your, you know what I'm saying though, what I'm trying to get at?
I do know what you're saying, and I appreciate that you see me in that way, and I see myself that way too. I do think that there are many people in my field who are getting the opportunities who come from the same kind of background as me. I mean, Jinx Monsoon is the prime example right now, as far as someone who's getting these like really major theatrical opportunities here in New York. And she comes from the same kind of background as me. I remember seeing her shortly after her Drag Race win, doing her Vaudevillians cabaret show. And when I
Oh
saw that
yeah.
show, I said, oh, this is someone cut from the same cloth as me. This is someone who speaks the same language as me. And so I do think that largely the people from my world who are getting those kind of opportunities, I do think that they have the goods to deliver beyond a persona or a personality or celebrity.
Sure.
But yes, I hear what you're saying, and I'm glad to be in the correct column.
Last question, because what's been really interesting about this conversation has been this idea of fluidity of identity and brand. I think is it's very intriguing to me because it's and what's so fascinating about drag is it's what you said. A drag queen knows who the fuck they are, knows what they're putting out there, and you know, but it's like even hearing you say like I'm in a moment, you're in that sticky situation now where it's like, well, what am I present? It's like going full steam ahead while also being fluid and a little unclear. I think is all very interesting. And I guess my question is a little basic, but I think it's important is what ties it, what if you were to come up with like some key things to consider when it ties brand together, legacy together across all of these things, what would it be for you? Like, I'll give you an example of something that I think it might be. The feeling you impart, no matter what I'm doing, no matter whether it's drag, film work, writing, directing, I want people to feel this way when they engage with my work. That could be, you know,
Yeah.
that could be an example of something that sort of can tie a linchpin that ties this diverse self of yours, this fluid self of yours together potentially. What do you think might be some of those linchpins for you?
Yeah, that feels pretty on target. You know, what you hear a lot as the goal for drag artists is, oh, I want people to come to one of my shows. I want them to laugh. I want them to forget about the weight of the world. And there's certainly plenty of art that is with that intention of taking you out of the reality. I, as someone who loves to feel, as everybody knows, I like art that doesn't necessarily just take you out, but puts you in and makes you think and makes you feel. I love nothing more than seeing a piece of theater that sparks conversation, that I'm talking about or thinking about for years to come. I'm just as I say that, the thing that comes to mind, two productions come to mind that are now seasons past. One was the most recent Oklahoma revival on Broadway, which I had really strong feelings about in multiple directions, but I thought about it and I talked about it with people for months and years to come. I saw, I guess this is like 2 seasons ago, at this point, Ain't No Mo, on Broadway. And I'm so grateful that I saw it in its last week and was honestly heartbroken that it closed, because I was like, everyone needs to see this. This is simultaneously the funniest and heaviest thing I've ever seen. And that, I think, is sort of like the centerpiece of like what I'd like my legacy in the arts to be. Like, I'd like you to be entertained, I'd like you to laugh, but I want you to feel something.
I love that.
I have this line from a song that I wrote with my season 9 Drag Race sisters, Clat, which is has a real kind of funny following and legend in its fabulousness and its kind of silliness. But there's one line that I wrote that I guess is what I just said. I just want you to feel, mama.
Right.
And that really is kind of what my art is all about. Like, yeah, I want you to have fun and laugh, but it's okay if you think deeply and maybe even cry too. That's okay too.
Well, that's the center of it all, isn't it? I mean, that's everything else is window dressing. It's like, to an extent, it's like ultimately what's at the heart of what we're trying to do in creative expression and what we want people to take away.
This is something that I've said about drag plenty, but you kind of really hit it right on the head for me in saying, like, the other stuff is window dressing and this is the heart of it. But actually, that's what's interesting about drag as an expression, is there's so much external, there's so much window dressing in the art form, and yet the power that it gives you, the armor of it all, is so fortifying when you're in it that you can actually take it with you even when you take it off. So that's what's kind of transformative about drag as an art form, and why I would encourage anybody, Joshua, to but I get it. I get all of the difficulties and the pain, the literal pain of it, but but there is something to be gained from putting that armor on. And you can, in fact, take it with you.
We used to have we went to school, we had a pretty extensive mask and sort of nose trajectory over the 4 years. And it was amazing, to put on a half character mask or even by the end, just simply a red nose, and to go, all of a sudden, I have permission to do so much more than I did with that. It's interesting what that stuff can unlock. So, okay, what's coming up next? Where can people find you? I know the big thing we can't talk about, but anything
Yes.
you want to point us in the direction of?
Well, the thing that I will announce, hopefully soon.
You're the new James Bond. I knew it. You're the new James Bond.
Yeah, the new thing, which we'll announce soon, I'm sure, is going to impact my schedule in the immediate. But do keep your eyes peeled for any schedule updates, including my return to Joe's Pub June 25th during Pride.
Amazing. We'll put all of the essentials in the show notes, of course, as to where folks can find
Sure.
you. But one final question is our comfort food performances. We name our, again, comfort meaning like something you come back to time and time again. I just call it basically a favorite performance of mine as of late. Does something come top of mind for you, Alex?
It's so funny whenever I'm asked like, oh, who's your, a question like this, I take it so seriously.
Important.
Because it's like, I guess it is important because it's like these things really do define us, like the art that we love.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two things on my mind. One, because you said comforting, like things you could go back to. I'm super excited for the premiere of Death Becomes Her because that film is something that I could watch probably every day.
Yes.
Wow. Oh my God. Do yourself a favor. I will tell you, the first half or 2/3 of it are just pure gold. It does go a little off the rails. But I could watch the first half of it like several times a day. So I'm excited that is hitting the stage this summer.
Yeah,
but
like Full Metal Jacket sounds like first half song.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did just see Oh Mary at the Lortel, starring Cola Scola. And that was a riot. I'm still chuckling about it days later. So
they're amazing.
That I'm glad that I caught that.
They're amazing. I know. Mike, you were on that email with them the other day when I was literally like, "Could you please get me a ticket because I can't get a ticket."
You can't get a ticket.
I know, but I'm hoping that they'll help me. That's Cole. If you listen, please respond to my email. Give me the ticket.
I don't think there's any tickets, but maybe it'll.
Well, it's going to Broadway, I think.
Well, there's
we'll see.
Rumors on rumors.
Maybe.
Rumors.
So mine is I just watched Burn After Reading again, which is such a good movie.
Yeah.
And you know who I think is just underrated. It's so basic, but I think Brad Pitt is so underrated. Just actually in general, I always seems like a crazy thing to say. And what I mean by that is I think he's a bit of a secret weapon from an actor standpoint. And Brad Pitt's performance in Burn After Reading is really great.
He's been written off constantly throughout his career because he's a fucking babe. But he's a good actor.
Such a babe.
He's a good actor.
He's a good actor.
He's a really good actor. Who do you got,
He's a good actor.
I think I already said this person, but not in this performance. But because we're talking about drag, honestly, it's Michael Jeter in The Fisher King. Have you ever seen The Fisher King?
I think you just said this one.
I didn't say Michael Jeter, did I? Shit.
Oh, no, maybe. No,
I probably said Michael Jeter into I fucking love Michael
The Green
Jeter.
Mile.
Probably The Green Mile.
Yeah.
But Michael Jeter, because it's on my mind because we're discussing drag. I wish if there's few people I wish I could like really, really work with. Like, I just think he's incredible. Just such a good fucking and he is so in that movie. He's just so heartbreaking, and he deserved an Oscar for that. I didn't know.
I didn't realize he was dead.
Oh yeah,
20 years ago.
A while ago. Yeah, exactly. He
wow.
I think it was I actually don't know what it was. I don't want to speak for him.
It's 50.
Yeah.
Well,
a gang shootout.
A gang shootout. That was, I'm sure that's what it was. Alex, love you. You're amazing. Thank you so much for being here and sharing so much wisdom. This has been Creative Risk, where we talk about art, entrepreneurialism, and everything in between. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like and subscribe. Really, it does help. And leave a review. And of course, check out our Patreon for bonus episodes, discounts, all the goodies. Thank you, Alex. And look at all the show notes.
Thank you, Alex.